Good morning, gentlemen. Wonderful time. I'm going to talk to you on something very important. When we were doing the staff college course, we used to make the SAN models and discuss the battle scenario. A very important thing. And now another thing has come in, which is artificial intelligence. That is called gaming, war gaming, and we plan how a war is going to be fought and what are the repercussions. It's a theory of probability. And of course, we'll have to wait and see what happens. And it's a matter of the brain. Gentlemen, I'm wanting to tell you something about what is happening in the world, and we are going to discuss here a possible battle scenario between China and America. It's a very big thing. America is the biggest power in the world, and China is number two. So, what will happen if there's a clash between these two? Where they're going to end up? What's going to be the result? That's the point which we're going to come to now. And I have a lot of things to say on this. I'm going to discuss this war scenario with two things. One is the SAN model, which I told you which you to do in staff college when I was doing my degree course for the postgraduate degree in military science from Madras University. And the second is the artificial intelligence creating a war game scenario as to who's going to win the battle between America and China. Now, I'll tell you, some of my friends have told me the Americans have carried out the war gaming exercises in the Pentagon. In fact, I believe, as per the latest report, they've carried out 4 scenarios, and the net result of all the 4, which the Americans themselves have calculated, is a victory for China. It's a very dangerous thing. And now let us see what is going to be the result. It's going to be a very interesting topic. Please listen to me very carefully. The battleground is going to be the Eastern Pacific. That is the place where China is claiming 90% of the South China Sea, number one. Number two, it is claiming the Spratly Islands of the Philippines. It is claiming Formosa, which has been recognized by the United States as a part of China. And it is feeling that it must take revenge against Japan for the humiliation and the military defeats which it inflicted on China during World War II, including the atrocities like that famous rape of Nanking. So, gentlemen, that is the scenario. Now, as far as the American army is concerned, they haven't forgotten one principle. And that one principle is you may have all the technology in the world, but you need the infantry soldier to hold the ground. That's the point. And no less a man than Field Marshal Barnard Viscount Montgomery has stated that you need the infantry soldier to hold the ground. And that is with the Achilles heel of the Americans. The Americans have got only 16 and a half divisions, if I believe correctly, which can be put into battle, while the Chinese would have close to 30. So there's a mismatch. And America on its own will not be able to fight China. That's one. Secondly, I'm talking of the SAN model scenario. There is the eastern border of China, which is policed by India, and the Chinese would be very unhappy if India were to join the battle against them from the east. So in case that scenario takes place, then the problem of manpower is also solved. The Indians have got plenty of manpower to spare for a battle with the Americans, and China will be defeated. That is the scenario in case India joins the battle against China in support of America. As far as the other countries who are going to support America, like Japan or South Korea or the Philippines, they're a big zero. I don't think they can do much. So the main pivot of this exercise is India. And India, I don't think, is going to fall into the American trap. That's my personal feeling. Narendra Modi too shrewd a man to start fighting the battle for America. No wonder the Americans are so keen that India becomes their ally. That's a fact. All sorts of facilities are being got ready for the Indians, but at the same time they keep on tightening the screw behind to give a warning that look, you don't agree with us, we're going to do something else. Now, as far as China is concerned, it knows what the problem is. So it has a detente with India. It is agreed to go back to the pre 2020 borders on the northern scale. Idea is to placate India, and their promise is upping of the trade to $400 billion. So it's a catch-22 situation as far as China is concerned, because China on its own, if India is going to be breathing down their neck in the Himalayas, will not be able to beat off the Americans who will be concentrating in the Eastern Pacific. Now, the war game scenarios which the Americans have worked out give a different picture altogether. They say that in any scenario, the American infantry will not going to be take much part because they will not be able to mount an amphibious invasion of the mainland of China. There is no way you can do it because of the paucity of soldiers. And India could engage the Chinese on the Eastern Front, but I don't think India has the capacity to hand over soldiers to the American army for an amphibious attack on China mainland from the Eastern Pacific. Is that possible? Now, the main strength of the Americans would be the aircraft carriers. Now, they got 4 of them, which are now floating around in the South China Sea and the Eastern Pacific at call. They are very dangerous machines, and they are the ones the Chinese fear. But as for the gaming exercise which will be carried out, what happens if the Chinese launch hypersonic missiles against the aircraft carriers? They have been carrying out exercises in the Xinjiang desert with cardboard models of the exercises of the aircraft carriers. And though these are very massive machines of 100,000 tons each, I don't think they are invincible. Even if a couple of hyper missiles are launched, and if 1 or 2 hit each of the carriers, all the 4 carriers will be rendered immobile. They won't be able to move forward and they would be stuck there. And America would then have no choice either to launch ICBMs or more weapons which would escalate the war and maybe World War III and a thermonuclear war which America would not like. So victory for America appears to be a little remote as far as this is concerned. And now what is going to happen really? Now the SAN model exercises show that China is going to be hard pressed if India joins the United States in a battle, which is not going to happen. And the United States has bitten off more than it can chew. The fact of the matter is that it is the United States which had made China what it is now. The Chinese have been doing their homework, and among the weapons which they have launched recently, in which we have seen in the Shanghai air show, is the J-35 5th generation stealth fighter. Now, if you look at that fighter, it's got the same look as the F-35 almost. I don't know about the performance part, the parameters, but it is classified as a 5th generation fighter, stealth fighter. And they could use that in the invasion of Taiwan. See, if the Chinese invade Taiwan, the Americans have committed to defend Taiwan. And the Eastern Front will not be opened, and the war game scenario sees that America will move in with its aircraft carriers, and the Chinese are ready for them. They'll hit them with hyper missiles, and the carriers, in case they are rendered hors de combat, that is, they go out of battle, the way is clear for China to invade Formosa, Taiwan, and occupy it. Because the American bases are so far away and their manpower so far away, they have got, how are they going to operate? Their bases in Guam or in Japan are not going to be of any help, or South Korea. And then you're not forgetting the belligerent North Korea, with Kim He could create any sorts of problems for the Americans. So, gentlemen, the war game scenario forecasts a victory for China as far as artificial intelligence is concerned, and as far as the land battle is concerned, in the sand models, a victory for the Americans and defeat for China in case India intervenes. Now, the crucial factor is India, and China knows it, and they will try to neutralize India with a friendly approach. Wait for one thing to defeat America and then catch India again by the tail. So, India is going to be sitting on horns, nest of horns. They won't know what to do. You leave China now, China will wait and come back again with greater force on you. So, gentlemen, the scenario is very strict. And the only thing which can really work in America's favor is there's an implosion inside China. An implosion. And after all, China is a very great autocratic country. And autocratic countries, even if the USSR collapsed, and perhaps China could also, but as it stands, it doesn't look likely. And one thing we must be very clear that America has created the Frankenstein. If you go through history, America's President Lyndon Johnson, I think we even give him a garland, the Chinese must garland him, but he let the Chinese go nuclear in 62, I think 63. And they had their first successful test in 64, when he had the bombers ready to bomb these sites in Xinjiang, but he didn't do it. And then they began to pour technology into China, thinking, you're going to have a big market for America. Let's go ahead. And they went ahead, big market. Chinese are very ingenious. They did reverse engineering, produced their own with the American brands, which they copied, put the stamp and said it's made in China. And with the result that China is an $18 trillion economy, just second only to the United States. And as per the World Bank and other reports, in another 10 years, it will overtake the United States. Now the question is the Chinese going to wait for 10 years to launch and free Taiwan? I don't think so. They would be looking for a much earlier action. And one thing let's bear in mind, one thing very important is that the Chinese are hemmed in from all sides. I don't think the Chinese-Russia border is settled, because Russia has occupied lots of Chinese territory during the days of the Tsarist Empire. And though a little of the territory was given away by Stalin to the Chinese do feel that they have been greatly wronged in history, not only by the Russians, but by the British, the Americans, everybody. Well, everybody has his grouse. And though we have the saying that old borders cannot be brought back in the modern world, yet this is precisely what China wants, and that is the seed which is going to blow up into war. So, gentlemen, we'll have to wait and see what happens. I have just given you a theoretical account of what is likely to happen. The American aircraft carriers are not going to be able to win the battle for the Americans. And basically, America is going to fight with one hand tied behind its back. That's what it means. Well, not that China is going to have a easy going time. It's not going to be easy, because the Chinese are going to be confronted by many, many variables. And the first of them, as per the theory of warfare, is morale, cooperation, planning, internal political situation. If you add up all these things, China would be hard pressed. Morale is a big factor in the Chinese army, because that one son syndrome has played hell into the Chinese system. Everyone wanted a one son only and no daughter, and that one son, once he's put in the army, dies, the whole tree is extinguished, family tree. Nobody wants it. So there's a morale problem in Chinese army. And I think China also knows that you need a strong economy, and the economy is now in doldrums. The real estate has collapsed, and many of their workers have been just sent home, and China is a totalitarian state, and you can't say anything. You say something, good my friend, come, I'll put you in the concentration camp. That's what happened in China. Well, gentlemen, these are just food for thought, exciting things. A war between China and the United States would be a catastrophe, but at the same time, I have a feeling it has to take place. Maybe now, later, we don't know when. But I don't think it'll be a thermonuclear war, maybe because both countries are wise enough. But the conventional war, America will be hard placed to beat China. That's number one. Number two, they can do it only if India is on the side, which is not going to happen. And the Chinese are at the moment cock-a-hoop with their latest weaponry, which they have shown with the J-35 and other planes. And what they lack are the aircraft carriers because they are under threat in their homeland, but they can't create the same type of threat to the American homeland because they don't have the carriers to move all the way to the Pacific coast of America. Well, gentlemen, I hope you have liked my video. Please share with your friends and come back for more. Goodbye and God bless.